Today, I will do a review of strategies that animals use to survive. This is a unit on biology subject. It consists of 5 lesson plans. Well, the easiest way to learn about my students was by contacting and speaking with master teacher, Mrs. Kimberly Jones. I also spoke with bilingual classroom assistant, Mrs. Betsy Villasenor. I had opportunity to access student school files and review a comprehensive information on academic record, the grades that the students earned in other classes, their test scores, relevant family situation and living situation, some history of their health records, and it just kind of gives you a great overview of how the student is doing in school and what is his background. Another great way to find out is by accessing the health clerk's office, and you can either speak with the nurse or health clerk or ask them to take a look at the files and see if the student had any major health issues. So my biology unit consisted of 2 direct instruction lesson plans, 2 cooperative learning lessons, and 1 inquiry-based learning lesson. So for my first direct instruction lesson, I chose an article which talks about the Neanderthal DNA being connected to human DNA at a much earlier time that previously has been thought. So I named this lesson as sort of with a driving question: who are Neanderthals and how are they related to humans? The new generation science standards that have been met within this class framework are LS1.A and LS3.A. Talks about inheritance and traits, DNA, evidence, and how it relates to human history. So the strategies that were implemented in this class was choral reading. I also used split notes taking. I guided students to analyze the information in the text in order to form a relevant question, and we did practice vocabulary. So to give you a review of some adaptations for multiple intelligences that have been used, I had students organize the facts that they learned about Neanderthals in kind of like a mathematical or chronological order. Another great way would be to maybe open the lesson with the Flintstones movie or a cartoon, since it's kind of a great way to have students look back at humans living in a different age, the Stone Age. There's also a video game that is available for play. It's called the Flintstones. For kinesthetic multiple intelligence, we could probably create maybe like a scene or act out the early lives of humans. In this example, you can see students' work. It's on a sheet of paper that the text for the article was printed, and they also numbered the questions that we created and also were able to answer by reading and getting the information from the text. The second lesson was cooperative learning, and it talked about genetic engineering and how humans change the world around them. In this lecture, we covered the new generation science standard that includes science as a human endeavor and also talks about technological advances that have influenced the progress of science, and science has influenced advances in technology. So it's sort of a two-way street where, not only human impact the world, but the world around us has a great impact on the humanity. So The second standard was science and engineering are influenced by society, and society is influenced by science and engineering. So in this class, I used Venn diagram, vocabulary practice, think, pair, share, and T-chart strategies. So on this slide, you can see a student's work. I just want to remind at sheltered classroom, most of my students are ELs. Some of the students actually had a hard time writing and speaking in English, and obviously the comprehension level was a bit impaired. So I learned that in the classroom, I just have to break up the assignments in smaller, easy to complete steps. So in this case, the student's work includes vocabulary practice. You can see where he wrote out the explanations or definitions for the words gene, DNA, chromosome, etc. The third lesson was also cooperative learning, and the idea is that the teacher can talk about the way that the cells are built in the body and basically relate the process of protein synthesis through the activity, in-class activity. The new generation science standards are HS-LS1-1 and also HS-LS1-2. Some of the in-class activities that we completed, basically students would have to simulate transcription and translation by building a sentence, which would be like a polypeptide from smaller blocks from words, which are your amino acids. And some of the adaptations that can be used for English learners, students basically cut out the sequence of amino acids or codons and match them with the corresponding DNA. They can glue those matches in a scientific journal, so that will help them understand the complementary pairing process. And also, I think a great way would be to implement technology in this lesson by using Chromebooks, and students can access Canva, Pictochart, or Venngage software that can help them to follow through and build the protein synthesis process by putting the parts and just kind of explaining the processes in more detail. In this lesson, I would practice the culturally responsive pedagogy. Also, basically, I would explain that cells are constantly built in our body via the process of protein synthesis. That's why it's so important for us to learn that process and learn that concept. We can also talk about association between the protein synthesis and sort of like construction of new buildings. So in a similar way, when the city builds new housing, the human body kind of builds new cells in order to for the organism to continue. Another culturally responsive pedagogy could be implemented by building excitement, sort of speak, and curiosity when a teacher talks about connection between protein synthesis and when students had a wound that healed fairly quickly, or they noticed that their hair and nails grow so quickly as well. So how does this process happen? What actually is responsible for that? This is a great way to kind of simplify and make this topic more relevant to kids. Also, I think as a teacher, I would emphasize that DNA contains instructions to how all cells in the body are built and function. So again, kind of bringing up the importance and the relevance of this topic. The fourth lesson is cooperative learning, build a beast. And for this lesson, I covered the following new generation science standards: MS-LS4-2 and also MS-LS4-6. Some of the front load vocabulary practices that I had to use, I had to include certain words, and this would be overlap between activating the previous knowledge and also practicing the vocabulary for this lesson. We would talk about examples and discussions on the effects of the environment on animal behavior and also traits. What kind of changes are beneficial to animal survival, and we talk also about evolution as a result of genetic changes that occur constantly changing environments. Some of the adaptations that can be used for English learners, for example, we could have students draw the pictures of existing animals that have adapted to various environments. So it's relying on their previous knowledge. We could also complete an assessment, which is also a group activity. The class is divided in groups of students, no more than three, and the students actually rolling the dice, and they have a handout where a particular number is corresponding with the environment. And after they roll the dice 5 times, they will have to build a unique animal that can adapt to those conditions. The following adaptations for multiple intelligences can be used in this class. We could also visit the zoo to identify animals and how they have been able to adapt to environments. A great way would be to watch a video describing and presenting the adaptations. A group activity for students would be a brainstorm possible adaptations. Also, they could write up in a scientific journal some of the ideas, and that would be interpersonal intelligence activated, and also linguistic help students read aloud the directions for the activity in order to clarify and help them identify the steps. Also, they can write and practice the new words during the class. So for my fifth lesson, which was direct instruction, I had students work to identify who's the predator, a prey, and producer in the food chain. We also talked about ecosystems, and I actually, for the assessment, we did a handout where they had to answer 7 out of 10 questions correctly. The new generation science standards are MS-LS4-3, and I also have MS-LS4-4. The strategies that were implemented in this lesson were: you are the teacher, stand up and sit down; 4 corners, where students had to identify animals as herbivore, carnivore, omnivore, or detritivore. The following adaptations for the multiple intelligences can be used. Again, visiting a farm, a hiking trail, or a zoo would be a great way to learn about animals. I also played a song which talked about animal survival, ecosystems, the hierarchy in the food chain, and we could discuss the lyrics of the song in a group and kind of brainstorm some answers or ideas. Students could activate the interpersonal intelligences by writing up a main new ideas after viewing the video. They could also read aloud the directions for the activity and practice new words. So the food chain handout was given at the end of the class and was used as an assessment. Students had to correctly identify the definition of the bolded word in each sentence, and I actually demonstrated the activity by completing the first example in the class. These are some samples of students' work. It's their handout from the lesson, and also you can see all about the food chain handout that was part of the assessment, and some more of the students' work. That will round up the unit on animal survival